Is there evidence for the resurrection? Well, I want to present 4 facts that point to the reality of the resurrection. And the following is an adaptation from a Dr. William Craig. So the first fact is the burial. After his crucifixion, Jesus was buried in the tomb by Joseph of Arimathea. This fact is highly significant because it means that the location of Jesus' burial site was known to Jew and Christian alike. In that case, the disciples could never have proclaimed his resurrection in Jerusalem if the tomb had not been empty. The New Testament researchers have established this fact on the basis of evidence such as the following. Firstly, Jesus' burial is attested in the very old tradition quoted by Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. Secondly, the burial story is part of a very old source material used by Mark in writing his gospel. Thirdly, as a member of the Jewish court that condemned Jesus, Joseph of Arimathea is unlikely to be a Christian invention. Fourthly, there is no other competing burial story that really exists. Fact number 2, the empty tomb. On Sunday, following the crucifixion of Jesus, the tomb was found empty by a group of his women followers. Among the reasons which have led most scholars to this conclusion are the following. Firstly, the empty tomb story is also part of the old Passion source used by Mark. Secondly, the old tradition cited by Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 implies the fact of the empty tomb. For any first century Jew to say that of a dead man, that he was buried and that he was raised, is to imply that a vacant grave was left behind. Thirdly, the story is simple and lacks signs of legendary embellishment. Fourthly, the fact that the women's testimony was discounted in first century Palestine stands in favour of the woman's role in discovering the empty tomb. And number 5, the earliest Jewish allegation that the disciples had stolen the body shows that the body was in fact missing from the tomb. The third fact is Jesus' post-mortem appearances. Now, on multiple occasions and under various circumstances, different individuals and groups of people experience the appearances of Jesus alive from the dead. This is a fact which is almost universally acknowledged by most New Testament scholars for the following reasons. First, the list of eyewitnesses to Jesus' resurrection appearances, which is quoted by Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, guarantees that such appearances occurred. These included appearances to Peter, to the 12 disciples, to 500 brethren, and even James, the brother of Jesus. Secondly, the appearance traditions in the Gospels provide multiple and independent proof of these appearances. This is one of the most important marks of verifying historical accuracy. And thirdly, according to the first century Jewish historian Josephus, James was martyred for his faith in Christ in the late AD 60s. Now, most of us who have brothers, it would take some convincing to convince you that your brother was the Lord, such that you would be ready to die for that belief. There can be no doubt that this remarkable transformation in the brother of Jesus took place because, in Paul's words, he then appeared to James. The fourth fact, and the most compelling in my opinion, is the disciples' own belief themselves. The original disciples believed that Jesus had risen from the dead despite their having every predisposition to the contrary. Think of the situation that the disciples faced after the crucifixion. Well, just before the crucifixion, they'd all deserted him, fled, or denied him. And then their leader was dead. Secondly, according to Jewish law, Jesus' execution as a criminal showed him to be a heretic, a man literally under the curse of God. The catastrophe of the crucifixion for the disciples was not simply that their master was gone, but the crucifixion showed, in effect, that the Pharisees had been right all along, and that for 3 years they had been following a heretic, a man accursed by God. Thirdly, Jewish beliefs about the afterlife preclude anyone rising from the dead to glory and immortality before the general resurrection of the dead at the end of the world. Now, despite all this, the original disciples believed in and were willing to go to their deaths for the fact of Jesus' resurrection. Now, the question is, what is the best explanation of these four facts that I've just presented? Now, most scholars would probably remain agnostic about this question. But for myself and the Christian, we can maintain that the best hypothesis for this is that, in fact, God raised Jesus from the dead.